I've got your energy stories for the third week of January 2023. And first, it looks like the Inflation Reduction Act, with its incentive to promote domestic content, is continuing to pay dividends. Chinese solar cell and module manufacturer JA Solar just announced it would build a $60 million 2-gigawatt solar panel assembly plant in Phoenix by Q4 of 2023, making solar panels for residential, commercial, and utility scale markets. Perhaps more impressively, Korean company Hanwha Q Cells just announced it will invest $2.5 billion in expanding one plant and building another plant in Georgia aimed at spanning the entire solar supply chain. The crown jewel here will be the first U.S. factory that converts raw polysilicon into 3.3 gigawatts of market-ready solar panels, which will be commissioned by Q4 of 2024. The factory will create ingots, wafers, cells, and finally finished panels, with the polysilicon feedstock coming from Hanwha's REC silicon plant in Washington State. For perspective, the U.S. added 4.6 gigawatts of new solar capacity in Q3 of last year. In the corporate Scope 2 world concerning electricity-related emissions, companies like Google and others have been focusing on trying to match consumption with renewables on an hour-by-hour basis for some time. But in late December, a group of leading companies in this area, such as Amazon, GM, Heineken, and Google, have shifted the carbon accounting focus to their impact on actual emissions, i.e., what is my behavior actually responsible for in terms of grid-related emissions in real time? To know the actual impact of one's activities in real time, you need actual, accurate data about what's happening on the grid and especially on the margin, that next resource being added or pulled back off the grid. REsurety, an analytics company that helps support and de-risk power purchase agreements, has joined with Watt Time, an environmental tech nonprofit, to boost availability of high-quality marginal emissions data to help these companies figure out their carbon accounting and what their activities are actually causing or not. And speaking of carbon, New York State is planning on a cap and invest program that would set falling limits on greenhouse gas emissions relative to a 1990 level that would raise more than $1 billion in yearly revenue. Under the program, large greenhouse gas emitters and distributors of heating and transportation fuels will have to buy emissions allowances, with the eventual goal of reducing emissions 40% by 2030 and at least 85% by 2050 off of those 1990 levels. Revenues will allow New York to increase clean energy investments while supporting disadvantaged communities. Just to the south, grid operator PJM announced it will fine generators between $1 and $2 billion for failing to deliver electricity during late December's bitterly cold winter storm Elliot. Nearly 46 gigawatts, 46,000 megawatts, over 23% of PJM's generation fleet was offline on December 24th, largely a result of plant equipment that failed to operate and fuel supply issues. Gas-fired gen represented 70% of the overall shortfall. Gas operators and RTOs such as PJM and ERCOT have often represented their assets as being more reliable, especially compared with variable renewables and energy storage. But with the experiences in ERCOT in February of 2021 and now PJM in December of 2022, we might want to revisit that assumption. More reliable capacity is the ticket, and in California, community choice aggregator Central Coast Community Energy just inked a 25-year, $775 million energy storage PPA for 200 megawatts and 1,600 megawatt hours with compressed air energy storage company HydroStore. HydroStore plans to build a massive underground cavern, the world's largest, in which it will compress air with water on top to maintain pressure. Capacity from the grid edge can also help, so it's welcome news that energy transition nonprofit RMI and founding members Ford, GM, Google, Nest, OhmConnect, and others have announced the Virtual Power Plant Partnership. This group will help push policy and industry to advance virtual power plants, aggregating tens of thousands of distributed energy resources such as water heaters, electric vehicles, and solar arrays to interact with and create value for the grid and provide that much-needed capacity. Well, that's it for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you again next week.